Hello, I'm Tiffany Parks, and this is A Bittersweet Moment with Katie Sewell.
Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell, and this is your midweek Bittersweet Moment. Now, on Monday, we heard an episode from the podcast Far From Home, created by the award-winning producer Scott Gurian, who, like me, has a background in public radio. Perhaps you could tell from the episode. Scott has been a guest on The Bittersweet Life. He appeared way back on episode number 174. It was titled Rally. Now, his show, Far From Home, was relatively new back then. And he was in the midst of producing a raucous and thought-provoking first season where he tells the story of participating in the Mongol Rally. For that event, he spent 7 weeks driving nearly 11,000 miles across Europe and Asia in a ridiculously tiny car. The journey began in London and ended in Mongolia. It is a harrowing adventure, and if that sounds intriguing to you, certainly one worth listening to. Just seek out Season 1 of the podcast Far From Home. And I thought I would share today just a tiny piece of the interview that we did way back then. He was visiting Seattle. I was home after living in Rome. And of course, he was at last off the road, leaving his tiny car behind. Here's just a little clip of what we talked about. But I mean, you'd have to admit it was a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the adventure.
Yeah. There's a quote that I put on my website. A friend told me this it's from Thomas Cahill, who's a writer. He's written about travel and adventure. And he says, an adventure is simply physical and emotional discomfort recalled in tranquility. Which is so true, because you're in the middle of these situations. You're like, what the hell have I gotten myself into? I could be back home. I could be lying on a beach on a normal vacation like most people would take. And here I am broken down at the side of the road in Turkmenistan or somewhere. And, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, why did I do this? But then you return home and you have these wonderful stories to tell and adventures, and people admire you for it, and you become the best storyteller at the party. And it's, memories you have for a lifetime.
I know you're a reporter, so that you're always looking for stories, but do you find that you sort of live your life as a story so that you have the good stories to tell?
Am I going on these adventures more to tell the stories myself as opposed to reporting? Or?
Yeah, it's part of your story. It's not like you telling the story of somebody else. Oh,
yeah, that's part of it. I think so, definitely. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I want to have more adventures and do crazy things. And as I said, the disagreement with my brother and myself, I'm always someone who's very much a planner, and even just coming here to Seattle and looking at the maps and figuring out, where do I go? And I aim to be someone who, I do still like to plan, and, because I always have this fear that I'll travel somewhere and I didn't look things up ahead of time, and it's a part of the world I'll never return to again. And if I just driven 10 miles out of the way, I could have seen this really cool thing. And then I end up all the way back home and I'm like, damn, I missed that opportunity. So I think there's definitely something to be said for a certain amount of planning. But I think hopefully in the future, if I do trips like this again, I really would love to travel at a much slower pace so I could do some of the planning, but then also allow some time for these chance encounters, meeting people, just having things happen. That sometimes these unplanned things are the most interesting and exciting, where you never know when you go to sleep in the evening. You never would have imagined when you woke up that morning where you ended up and what you were doing by the end of the day.
If you want to hear the entire interview, go back and seek out episode 174. It's titled Rally. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to The Bittersweet Life so you never miss an episode. And check out the podcast Far From Home as well. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.